It's pretty obvious that most of Arcane's cast consists of tragic characters. Everyone who's part of the main cast and even a lot of these side casts have suffered great tragedies where we as the audience are able to empathize with these characters because of what they're going through. Even characters like Singe fit into this category now after what was revealed about him in Season 2's second act. Yeah, he's an objectively bad person with an extremely messed up moral compass, but we can at least understand why he's like this now. Losing his daughter when she was at such a young age, not being able to move on from her death, eventually dedicating his life's work to finding a way for the human race to achieve some form of immortality, to save people from themselves, as he put it.
To complete your work, to save us from ourselves.
And I feel like there's an argument to be made that Vander has gone through more hardships than any other character in the show now. So I wanted to take this video to break down Vander's life and by extension what seemed like his point of no return scene at the end of Season 2's 6th episode. While some viewers out there may have already been under the assumption there was no hope for Vander to begin with because he's Warwick, it didn't automatically mean that was going to be the case from the beginning. That's what I love about Arcane, is that it's clearly taking its own creative choices through its existence to prove it's not only telling the copy and pasted lore stories that existed from League of Legends' pre-established universe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Jinx and Vi weren't even confirmed to be sisters until Arcane came out. All we really knew was Jinx was a Zaun criminal who was being seeked out for capture by Vi and Caitlyn. We're now at a point where Arcane's story is basically serving as the updated League lore for these characters, and I for one am incredibly happy with this choice because the events of Arcane are a lot more interesting than the vague lore we were previously working with. Warwick and Vander fell into this too because in the League lore, Warwick didn't even have a name. He was just some guy who used to be a gangster and got kidnapped by Singe for experimentation. The bottom line is Arcane has subverted the expectations of League fans who knew about the old lore of these characters. With the confirmation that Vander and Warwick are one and the same, it gave us and the characters close to him a semblance of hope. Vander was indeed still in there. His physical appearance still resembled a wolfman, but he was capable of calming down under the right circumstances, even recognizing his daughters despite them being much older than they were when he was presumed dead. Jinx was the first to be recognized at the end of episode 4 when Warwick was rampaging through Stillwater Prison. It was an incredibly close call too, because if Jinx didn't have her signature painted weapons, Warwick wouldn't have been able to put 2 and 2 together. Then episode 5 had him coming face to face with Vi again, with Vi calling out his name being what got him to calm down. I like the consistency with the fact that simply seeing someone he used to know wasn't enough to get him to calm down both times. First the grenade, then Vi having to specifically call him by his old name were the ones that did it.
Are you crying?
Of course not. I've just got something in my eye.
The majority of episode 6 consisted of Warwick being in his calm state again, with Jinx and Vi hoping Victor and his newfound Hextech powers would be enough to cure Vander back to his human form, giving us a bit of false sense of hope that things could maybe go back to normal if this were to work. Like I said before, with Arcane changing League lore as it goes on, it didn't rule out the possibility of a version of Warwick who still has the beastly strength but the mind of Vander. The current League version of Warwick is sort of like that already actually, because he has special interactions with Vi and Jinx that seem to reference the raid on Silco's base of operations.
You were there. The fear in your eyes, sir. I've seen it before.
So he remembered them, but it didn't seem like it was fond memories like they are in Arcane. Perhaps it was the beast part of him twisting the memories in a more negative way in the League version, who knows. Then there's Victor, who was struggling to cure Vander more than any other person who's needed his help. Based on his interaction with Huck, I'd imagine most if not all of Victor's attempts to cure someone went as easily as it did with Huck, whereas Vander's old self was so deeply tucked away in his subconscious, it was taking Victor what looked like multiple days to make progress on Vander, showing us how Victor was able to see his old memories too. This trip down memory lane with that Remember Me song playing in the background made me very emotional, because it's a sad reminder of the life Vander will never be able to go back to and all that he suffered even before becoming Warwick. He and Silco used to be so close that even others around them saw their bond as unbreakable, but the death of Vi and Jinx's mom Felicia at the hands of Piltover enforcers drove a very big wedge between them, as Silco would go down a much darker radical path to bring Piltover to their knees, while Vander would take a more hands-off approach, trying to keep as much peace as possible between Zaun and Piltover without resorting to violence because he didn't want to lose more people he cared about, all while constantly regretting how things went down between he and Silco, even writing Silco a letter of apology that was left in one of the mines they used to work in. But because Silco never got the letter, these guys would continue to drift apart. One of the only things that really kept him going at this point was taking care of the adopted kids, and trusting them to take the helms of Zaun once they got old enough that Vander was too old. Sadly, everything would go to shit when he was kidnapped by Silco's gang, resulting in the deaths of Milo Carlo, Claggor, and the near death of Vander himself. That was the day Vander truly lost everything. Him not being around caused history to repeat itself with Vi and Jinx's strained relationship, essentially becoming the new versions of Vander and Silco. Victor was able to see just how much of a noble man Vander once was. The part where Victor said Vander was worth the risk to save was one of my favorite Victor moments in the entire show. Even with Victor's powers slowly getting weaker while he was trying to heal Vander, he still refused to give up. It was clear that part of Vander still inside Warwick didn't want to give up either, considering how he never turned into his red-eyed, bloodthirsty form during the majority of his stay in Victor's commune. The healing of someone like Vander would have done so much good for Zaun too, considering the whole martial law thing Bessa and Caitlyn had going since the start of Act 2. While Victor would continue to work on Warwick, Singed and Bessa would eventually show up to Victor's commune to get Warwick back. Singed was the one who made him that way after all, so he felt somewhat responsible for him, plus he made that deal with Bessa that grants her authority over both of them, so. Singed would attempt to convince Victor to mix Warwick's blood with his own to finally achieve their dream, though at the cost of Vander losing his old self forever. Victor refuses to let Vander's humanity go for Singed experiments, so he asks him to leave. However, Singed isn't willing to give up that easily, preparing a serum that would not only prevent Victor from eventually curing Warwick, but force Warwick into his beast state, presumably for good. This sequence of events absolutely destroyed me. The idea of Vander being back to normal was so close. Even when Noxus tried making their move by sending Rictus in to deal with Caitlyn and Jinx, Warwick would intervene and throw Rictus out a window.
Don't touch my daughter.
That is cinema.
The show of progress in that moment was very clear because Warwick was able to engage another person in violence without entering a rampage. In that moment, he was simply protecting the daughter he loved. Hence why a few seconds later, he was able to simmer down and share some affection with both Jinx and Vi. It wasn't until Jace blew a hole through Victor's chest out of fear of what Hextech powers were doing to the people where everything went to chaos. Warwick now being at the center of it all again. I potentially misspoke in my last video saying the supposed death of Victor is what caused Warwick to go berserk, when the more realistic possibility was Singed had come to after being choked out by Caitlyn, and gave Warwick the serum that would prevent Victor from curing him. We then see Warwick emerge from the shelter he was in, lava pouring out from almost every crevice of his body, most notably from his tear ducts. Everything here was such an amazing yet depressing way to show the internal struggle Vander was going through here when becoming this. And Bessa and her soldiers would make their move to subdue Warwick, and all Warwick could do was attack anyone who got in his way, whether it be friend or foe. The tears of lava would continue to flow out as the part of Vander that was still in there but had no control clearly didn't want to do this, and this way of crying was his only way of showing he was still in there. To make a loose comparison here, what Vander had been going through this whole time as Warwick reminds me a lot of the sunken place from Jordan Peele's Get Out. The original soul of the body still being there, but simply as a passenger rather than the one in control. No matter what the new soul is doing and no matter how bad it is, the old soul simply has to look on in helplessness. This is a fate that was considered even worse than death in that movie, as evident by how Walter the groundskeeper himself when Chris briefly brought him to his senses with the flashlight of his camera. To him, simply being put out of his misery was a better fate than having to go back to being a passenger in his own body. Although in the case of Vander and Warwick, the consequences are much more severe because he's having to watch his own body full-on murder people in brutal ways. With the worst part of all being his murder of Jinx's new best friend, Aisha. Aisha was technically the reason Jinx was pushed to look for Warwick with Vi. The blossoming friendship between these two was slowly giving Jinx some sanity back, while Vander was slowly working his way up to have a second chance at his old life, only for it to be ripped away from him at the hands of a genius bald-headed bastard. The curse of tragedies have not stopped falling upon these found families, and it doesn't seem like it'll ease up anytime soon. It's clear the message within the pattern had one of the biggest impacts on Arcane we've ever seen, not only for the fact that the writing this episode is very superb outside of a bit of pacing issues I personally had with Jace killing Victor a bit quickly, all things considered, but the way the suffering of these characters continues to make the story more interesting. I'm sure most people were expecting Aisha to die from the jump, yet the way her death was handled still made us feel for her because of the impeccable execution of it. Dying at the hands of Warwick, who'd completely lost control, couldn't have been a more tragic way to go out for both of these characters. The final scene of Aisha looking up at Warwick smiling while Warwick looks down on her, still crying tears of lava, will forever be ingrained into my brain as one of my favorite animated sequences in any show I've ever watched. Huge thanks to my gold tier patrons, BFP4, Izzy Torium, Draconis, and London Morse. You guys' support really means the world to me. If you enjoyed this video, don't be a stranger to leaving a like down below and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye. episode.